The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Wednesday in the Riv after a council meeting. And there was some sparks flying yesterday.
Yes, there were. And I'll tell you now, it was definitely an interesting meeting. But I have to take us to a different way right now. Guess what's going on? The Fall River Police Department's again in the news. More mishandled evidence? Question mark.
Question mark. Yeah, numerous question marks.
Yeah, well, according to the Fall River Herald News, in December, Police Chief Jeffrey Cardoza removed 2 boxes of evidence from the former home of Fall River Police Officer Stephen Washington. Last month, allegations surfaced that the home was filled with drugs and that Cardoza improperly disposed of that evidence. Now, as you progress further, you find that the boxes contain files of former cases that Officer Stephen Washington had worked on. And there was 2 bags of cocaine found in the boxes. Laura Washington, who is a city council candidate and substance abuse counselor, said that she felt she did the right thing by contacting the mayor, and she said that she wanted to be sure that it was handled properly. Captain Paul Gavin reported in February that the drugs were found, and Washington was ordered to properly enter the evidence, which is very interesting. Now, here's why they're saying this happened. The mayor and Chief Cardoza and Laura Washington all say that this is happening because of politics. That's why this is happening. Not the fact that over the past year, the police department has had a morale problem, which has been evidenced throughout the investigations and whatnot. And Laura Washington said, "I'm at peace with my decision in this matter, as I did what I thought was right. I am disheartened, however, that there are obviously politically motivated agendas at play here." How is that, if the evidence wasn't properly entered into the record, how is that politically motivated? Well, and I guess they're saying that network news organizations are looking into this, and on the heels of what happened with Robillard, this is going to be very interesting to see how this has happened, how this pans out for the mayor and for Chief Cardoza. Chief Cardoza was clear, though. Regardless of the rumors or the situation, there is need for a fair and impartial investigation because we certainly have morale issues at the Fall River Police Department. That was from City Council President Cliff Ponte. Fall River Police Chief Jeffrey Cardoza, where's that quote? What is most concerning is that despite my best efforts to unify the Fall River Police Department, in particular leadership, behind the work we do on behalf of the city and its residents, some individuals appear to be intent on disparaging me and the agency. I will not allow rumors, innuendo, and misguided attempts to go tarnish my reputation or detract from the hard work and dedication exhibited daily by the overwhelming majority of the Fall River Police Department's sworn and civilian staff.
Well, wait a minute. I'm out. I'm going to take my vitamins. Well, I have to agree that a full investigation is needed. And it's this is another problem with about transparency and issues like this. When you get yourself into a situation now where you really need to call in maybe the federal FBI or state police to do an investigation. Uh, Look, I don't claim to be an expert in police uh, procedure, and I will say that, but I think I watched enough monk series movies and Perry Mason, uh, and I've had a little bit of experience being in court and stuff and dealing with evidence based on the fire uh, scenario. But the chain of custody with evidence is critical. So if they found something in somebody's basement, you're going to tell me that a defense lawyer isn't going to question the validity of that if it's used as evidence? It's almost, obviously you have to account for it now, but to mock it as evidence, to me, it would appear that it would be useless as evidence because the chain of custody isn't there.
Right.
And so, but as far as all the other stuff is concerned, this is like a soap opera. But the problem is, there are obviously problems in the department, and it's, and I understand from the chief's perspective. I don't know, and I don't think we will know, and that's the problem, because I don't expect us to be privy to what he's doing internally to deal with these issues about there are other people that may have not handled evidence properly, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully he's initiated some form of investigation to deal with it. And that's the problem. We've got to listen to all sides.
Well, according to the story in the Herald News, the investigation was immediately turned over to the professional standards unit of the Fall River Police Department. Now, prior to us coming on the air, I was having a conversation with someone that's particularly close to this show, and we were talking about how this should be handled by an outside agency, like you said. And I said maybe the state police should investigate this. And the reason why I say that is not that I don't trust Chief Cardoza, and it's not that I don't trust professional standards, but the city is starting to not trust the police department. And so to remove that situation, I think it would be better for an outside agency to do the investigation. But that's just my opinion. And like you, I'm not privy to police procedure and outcomes.
But I totally agree with you, CJ, because if you remember, was it Cranston that called in an outside investigation from the state police?
Yes.
Cranston, Rhode Island, and many, many departments. Because listen, there are certain things when they get to this point, as you said, that really have to be done by an outside independent source. Just like an audit. We've had thousands of audits in the city of Fall River, yet there's all kinds of problems with accounting for money. That's why we've been proponents of a outside audit. But this is a situation where you're actually putting the Professional Standards Bureau in a position where no matter how thorough an investigation they conduct, there are going to be people in the community, as you said, that are going to say, well, they covered for their friends, or this guy was a buddy of his, and I saw them, they were in the same foursome at the police golf tournament, and blah, 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 blah. So the reality is, in order to relieve everybody and say, this was a neutral investigation by an outside, not a former Fall River police chief either, as it was done the last time. And I have absolutely nothing against that, against him, because, I knew him and I got along with him. And I think he was I think he did a good job. But the investigation the last time was a former Fall River police chief. I always have said that when stuff like this happens, especially within a police department or even a fire department, because uniformed departments are they have a brotherhood that, they work together, they live together almost. They're in the car and they put their lives on the line together. So there's always going to be a question as if they're covering for somebody because, of that kind of intimacy that you see on these departments. I think it's incumbent on the city to bring an outside agency in to do the investigation and actually relieve the burden on the professional standards. Because professional standards, no matter what they do, they're going to be second guessed because of the fact that they're
Exactly.
part of the department. And
Exactly.
I believe you're 100% right, and that's the way it should be done.
And I really think that Paul Coogan should have another conversation with the chief and say, do you think that maybe we should start talking about bringing in the state police to look into this matter? Or, do you think it would be appropriate? Because people are already saying, or people may start saying, that this investigation isn't totally accurate. There's going to be questions. But again, that's left to the administration. That's not left to me. It's not left to you.
Yeah.
And as it was made very clear yesterday in the city council meeting, it's not left to the city council. Their authority is restricted by the charter.
The charter. Yeah. Well, look, I disagree slightly with what you said, because I don't believe that the mayor should have a conversation with the chief. He should just call in an outside agency. That's what happened in Cranston. The police chief in Cranston agreed with that, but however, the mayor wasn't going to say, "Well, if you disagree, okay, we'll let you do it your way." He is the chief executive officer of the city, and in Cranston, they fundamentally brought it in outside. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
I don't think it should be a conversation. I think there should be a conversation and say, "Listen, this is what I'm going to do. I want to hear what you think." And I think that the chief, and I don't like to assume, because what happens with assume.
Yep.
But I think that the chief will say, okay, because if they've got nothing to hide, and if things were done right by him and everybody and the other people, the people who have done things right, they're not going to object to an outside neutral agency coming in. And I think that's the only way we can handle it. As you say, it's unfortunate, but it seems like the distrust level, because it hurts the entire department. And I have the utmost respect for police officers who go out every day in this war zone and put their life on the line.
Right.
And I think it's a disservice to them to have the public start questioning them because of something like this. I think that it should be investigated, and after the investigation, they should make recommendations to make sure it doesn't happen again. And let's put it behind us and let these police officers, go back to work and give them the respect that they deserve.
Let them do their job.
That's right.
That's the big thing. Let them do their job. So, all right, enough of the breaking news in the city.
Breaking.
Now let's get to the breaking news in the city council.
Yeah, that was quite the meeting. We had a little tiff there at citizens input.
And actually, the best part of the meeting was citizens input. I mean, between Carlos Caesar and Mr. Ferris, or I should say the manager of Ferris Realty, I mean, it was mind-boggling. I mean, the big complaint from Ferris Realty was the President Avenue Plaza, because they don't have parking for their customers, because the parents and the students and the student body at Durfee High School are rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. And I hate putting it that way, but that when you try to run the guy down with your car, I think that's kind of rude, crude, and socially unacceptable. Okay? The man was hit by cars because he wouldn't let people in the parking lot. That's not Durfee High School's parking lot. And then, of course, he's had several meetings with Paul, or at least one meeting with Paul, and Paul told him, wait 5 or 6 months. 5 or 6 months.
There's decisive leadership. Let's just hope it goes away.
Right. Well, it gets even better, okay? Because not only did he say it to him, and in this case, he can't refute it because he said it to the school committee in a school committee meeting, and he said it on WSAR. So, of course, last night, Linda's making excuses.
Of course. Well, yeah, well, take a lane away. Take a lane away from a place where there's 2 high schools and a college, and the college isn't even anywhere near full capacity. I hate to say it, but we almost have to thank heavens for COVID.
Right.
Because if BCC was at full capacity like it normally is at the beginning of the fall semester, I mean, that place would be, we probably had a couple of stabbings and murders up there by the time it was over. Because, you know that. So
I know.
We used to do it in the studio. At spring session, you couldn't find a parking place.
I know.
They were parked on the lawns. That BCC had a tremendously high student population. And now you're going to add that. So what do these idiots do? They take a lane away. There's no adequate parking. They take a travel lane away and restrict it. And they want it. So I had to look up one of my Groucho Marx quotes because I just had to get this, because this is what happens with wait 6 months, because this is what politicians do all the time. This is Groucho Marx, is one of his most famous quotes. Politics is the art of looking for trouble, finding it everywhere, diagnosing it incorrectly, and applying the wrong remedies. And that's exactly what they're doing. So the remedy is let all these things go. Let the business community suffer. People can't get into that thing to shop. They can't get into CVS. They can't get into Dow Market. They can't get into Ace Hardware. They can't get into Newport Creamery. All those businesses are suffering. And our chief executive officer's plan is to wait 5 months.
Or 6.
Or 6. Is he going to give opera money to all those places to subsidize their lost revenue? What's going to happen if somebody does get run down by a car? What's going to happen if somebody does get out of a car and start hitting the other guy with a baseball bat? Because this stuff happens. Because people, they're maniacs up there. I know they are.
Yeah.
And this is outrageous. And again, a glaring example of his inability to make any kind of decision.
Well, what was interesting was, as I said, Linda was kind of defending the situation, and we've heard it. Even Pamela Liberté LeBeau said the situation is not as bad as it was when it first opened. You know what? It's still bad. I don't care if it's 10% better, 20% better, or 1% better. It's still bad. But Linda had said, why don't you call the sheriff's office and see if they'll send down a few men, because they have to do so much community time, and take and have them patrol your lot. And he said, I've already called the sheriff's office, but he says he can't come down because the mayor has to call and request it. So I called the mayor and asked him to do it, and he said he doesn't want to step on any toes. Type of quote. That's not a quote unquote. That's he basically said he didn't want to do that without asking, I guess, the chief of police. So he's the mayor. He should be able to make that decision. That would be good leadership.
Wait a minute. Politics, this is my own quote. Politics is the art of making excuses for everything. It's Trump's fault. Let's blame this on Donald Trump. Joe Biden screwed up the evacuation. It was his evacuation, but they're blaming it on Donald Trump. They blame everything on Trump. Let's blame this on Trump. Listen, City Council. Listen, Linda and Pam. If they did their jobs, it shouldn't have happened. There's always a lot of traffic at the beginning of school. Then people learn to leave a little earlier, a little later, and it does kind of get a little bit better. But now they can't use a parking lot, I've been told, because they still can't use they're going to have to knock a building down to make parking. They took a lane out of a place that needs really 4 lanes of travel. Because after you get by the entrance of Durfee, traveling south on Ellsbury, there used to be 2 lanes, one to go right or go straight ahead down or take a left down President Avenue. So it allowed 2 lanes of traffic, allowed better flow for the buses and stuff. And going back, you could use 2 lanes on the way up. So they took an entire lane out in the middle of Ellsbury Street in front of the school. Absolutely no planning. Nobody on that committee, nobody involved in this entire process remembered that we have Bishop Connolly, Durfee High School, and BCC there. They've had problems at the beginning of every school year with a lot of traffic, but now they made it worse. And there's no damn excuse for that as far as I'm concerned, except lack of planning. Because you remember how many P's? Poor planning promotes piss poor performance.
That's it.
The 6 P's.
That's it.
No planning. No planning at all. Somebody got a brilliant idea to cross-hatch the middle of Ellsbury Street and not figured out that there's always a problem, and it's going to be a bigger problem if you take away and break that flow. No, and they also didn't realize there was a parking lot that was available. They didn't look at the parking. Again, just like when they build market rate housing, aren't they supposed to have a particular amount of parking spaces?
Yep.
And most of the time they don't.
And they don't,
so,
exactly.
Again, listen, I don't want to hear the damn excuses. It's an election year. Everybody's going to make excuses. Lack of planning, lack of ability to make a decision. And that's the bottom line.
Yep, that's for sure. Well, I'll tell you, like I said, Sean Kadim made it very clear last night that pursuant to the charter, the city council does not have the authority to instruct, order, request, or manage city employees or city departments. They are only involved to investigate and appropriate monies and make the rules. So hopefully they took that. Now, for the next big item, where we only have about 5 minutes left or so, Jasiel Correia defense and family plead mercy. The family's begging for mercy for him. They want him to have a 3-year sentence with 3-year probation. And what was that? Adequate? Three years probation and restitution. Substantial period of incarceration for non-violent first offense, particularly for a man as young as Mr. Correia. That was filed by his attorney, William Fick, F-I-C-K. Not the other way. But the thing that bothered me most was that they got 2 letters from two clerics, 2 religious people. One, Father J. Mello, who he appointed to the Diamond School Committee, and the other was from Conquerors for Christ. And one of the things that they said was in their brief, their filings include 9 letters recommending leniency written on Correia's behalf from several of Correia's relatives and 2 faith leaders. This is not the case where Mr. Correia sought public office for the purpose of enriching himself and abusing power. That's what the memo reads. In May, Correia was convicted. Yeah, we know that. So it's very interesting to see because they're asking for a substantial amount of money. Now, shortly after the Herald News came out with this article, they came out with another article, a fact check article. And they went over Jasiel's memorandum, and they picked it apart. And right after that was published by the Herald News, the U.S. attorney took it and entered it as an exhibit in his pleadings for his request for time. So, again, his memo pleading for mercy may be the same thing that gets him more time.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's Fix or Fitch. I don't know how you pronounce that thing, but I found that what you read a little puzzling. I don't think I would have written it that way, because he said he didn't run to enrich himself, but he did.
Right.
After he got in. So I think that actually that's probably why the prosecution entered it into evidence. He didn't run for office to get himself rich and steal money, but once he got in, he did. And that's the point. You know, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, just like they say, ignorance is no defense. Ignorance of the law is no defense. Also, the fact that you didn't intend to become corrupt doesn't negate the fact that you were corrupt.
Right.
In a court of law, because it's about what you did, not what you thought you were going to do. And it's actually what you did. So it's going to be interesting. But, you know, I'm glad you brought that up quickly because we got about 3.5. But I heard this morning from someone that they're not going to provide a video link to that sentencing. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that.
No, I just heard that this morning.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Because as far as I could tell earlier today, they're still letting people register for them. So we'll know on Thursday. Mm-hmm. We'll know on Thursday if they're going to allow a video link. So it should be interesting. But because I want to watch that, and I'm sure that our station manager, Keith Tebow, also wants to watch it. Because I know a lot of people in Fall River want to know what's going on. So hopefully they have this available. Can we
have a lottery or something? Say guess the sentencing and the amount of restitution. Closest one gets a dozen donuts or something.
Yeah, we don't want to send them to the steakhouse. You know, one of the other arguments that they put in his request for leniency was the fact that he did recently get married, and he says that it's a godly marriage, and they want to have children. And if he gets a heavy sentence, she may not be able to have children when he gets out of jail. I mean, she is 31. But, I mean, at 42, she may not be able to have children. That's quite possible. But it's going to be interesting to see if that holds any weight with the judge. And remember, a lot of money is involved here. A lot of money.
Well, remember that old adage. If you do the crime,
you're going to be
prepared to do the time.
That's right. It's not always easy.
Because if he gets off with that argument, every criminal going to jail facing a stiff sentence is going to get married.
That's right.
They didn't want to have kids.
That's right. That's right. So it will be interesting to see. I'm telling you, we never have enough time because this show, we could have beat up the police department. We could have beat up Jasiel Correia. We could have beat up the city council. But those are just some of the highlights. You know, we're only able to give you some of the highlights of what's going on in the city, which is always a little bit difficult. But again, you know, Fall River at its best. And the best part of the whole thing today, it's all politics. It's all politics. It's politics' fault. So
and remember, when in doubt, wait 5 or 6 months.
That's right. We're going to wait 5 or 6 months. Because again, I mean, you go by there regularly, don't you?
Oh, every day.
Right.
Every day.
Are you going down there earlier now?
Oh yeah, I go very early or after the school is in session, and then later on after the school gets out. Depends on what the schedule is with me and the dog likes to walk up there rather than just run around in the backyard. So I take her for a walk up there at least once a day, sometimes twice. But I've now altered I have the option. My dog doesn't go to Durfee.
Right, exactly. Well, we're out of time. And just so people know, Durfee now opens at 7:05, so you can get there even earlier. I want to thank you for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, hold your politicians accountable, and take care. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.